We're so excited to be here with all of you. My name is Janet Zwick, and I have the honor of being here with my partner, co-facilitator, Free Minds, Carlos Alonso, and Jean Downing, who's 2022 Congressman John Lewis Fellow at Free Minds, and Eon Williams, who is a book club facilitator in our reentry program, in our jail program, in our youth program. There's so much to say about Eon. You'll learn much more about him soon. And a wonderful intern, um, Maisha Burnham. And we're very happy to be here. JDAI is really it's at the heart of what we care most about, and I think it's fair to say for all of us, like not just professionally, personally. Um, the Free Minds is began as a result of a teenager, and we've grown, but teenagers are and youth are absolutely at the center of our mission, I think personally as well as professionally. Uh, Jean, Carlos, and Ian were all teens when their lives were irrevocably changed by being sentenced as adults and incarcerated as adults while they were young people. They were not adults, they were children. And now they're here, and we're so lucky. They're all home. And their generosity, talent, dedication to making sure that that does not happen for other teens, making connecting, and also making changes. Advocacy. All of them do this every single day. So it's really a joy to be with all of you, and they will be the center of this conversation. Um, we hope that you will come away. You're all here because juveniles and your pretrial. Pretrial is such a challenging time. Back in the day, I represented juveniles. Um, it's such a critical time, and it's not an easy time necessarily to connect, but it's that time where there's so much opportunity. Incredible things can happen. And we hope you come away inspired and have lots of energy to try some of the things, uh, either that you hear about or you come up with new ideas as a result of the conversation we have. Um, and so before we even give you any kind of overview of what Free Minds is, I mean, you know from the title, we're a book club and writing workshop. Um, we we do an exercise, whether it's with students, with anybody, whether you have background knowledge or not, just to sort of get you thinking and connecting a little bit with yourself. We hope it'll give you some insight into the work we do, and you'll connect it to the work you're going to do. So I'm going to hand over the mic to Carlos to get us started with our icebreaker.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Carlos, and like Janet's saying, we use this icebreaker to sort of connect and have be on the same kind of page, right? So we always start by asking to join us in the chat and type in the first word that comes to your mind when you hear the word prison. Humanization, inhumane, lonely, cage, inhumane, despair, sad, okay,
Trauma,
trauma,
alone,
frightening, sadness. So as they're coming in, right, you'll be able to see also like how if we were to put them in a category, like to me, that category would be like sadness, right? If I were to give you the mood, it would be just that, like sad. And if it was a color, it'll be something like grayish or just something opaque, right? Um, so now, same thing, using the chat. What is the first word that comes to your mind when you hear the word poetry?
mm,
Love. I like how that one popped up first.
healing heart, beautiful life,
Yes,
peace,
freedom,
warmth, soothing, powerful. Ooh,
life
like those.
speech,
Creativity.
warmth, soothing, hope. I like that one too.
Yeah.
And the same thing, if I was to, as they're coming in and you'd be able to see, like if I was to put these in the category, like the mood would be like something like happy, right? And the colors for me is crazy because I can never pick one, right? And I always tell Janet when we do this, the colors for me that I would pick are always those that remind you of a sunrise or a sunset. Pink, blue, orange, right? The vibrant kind of, let you know that we are alive, right? So this is um as you can see, it's a contrast between the two groups, um, complete opposites. And here at Free Minds, we use this also to tell the people like how Free Minds creates that bridge that connects those two things that are complete opposites of each other. And with that, we'll turn it over to Janet to tell you a little bit about Free Minds, and how it all got started.
So we serve um, incarcerated young people, now adult men and women as well. But we all began out of the mission and the vision of it was a 17-year-old boy named Glenn McGinnis who wrote a letter to journalists. He was on death row in Texas in the late 90s, and he one of those letters reached our co-founders, who were journalists here in DC, uh, on Australian TV of all things. And Kelly Taylor, one of our founders, wrote back, and immediately, actually, Glenn McGinnis and Kelly realized they both love to read, and they developed the first Free Minds book club, writing back and forth with each other, developing this very strong friendship. They'd read the same books and they'd share, and they became very very close. And Glenn was executed, and he was the person that came up with we were named for Glenn because he described himself, and the joy of having this relationship, and the fact that despite uh, the horrendous condition he was facing and in, his mind was free. Nothing could stop that. So that is why we're called Free Minds. And he asked Kelly and Tara, who's a producer, uh, he really wanted others to have the experience he had had. So they came back to DC and went to the DC jail, where unfortunately a lot of kids in DC are charged as adults. And at that time, they were thrown into the DC jail. And I'm not going to talk about that because the three men here experienced that. So they will share that with you. But uh, it began as a book club and it grew into a writing program. Um, and I'm going to just show you, Carlos is going to actually walk you through a little bit, just an overview of how it works. And then we're going to get to our speakers, but just so you have a bit of an idea. I'm going to share my screen here, and Carlos will walk us through the stages because we've
And
grown.
yes,
We've
I always describe it as that, like how much Free Mind has grown from the origin. And this right here is our members in the middle. You see the book club. Um, you go ahead to the next one, Janet. Um, and this is our book club, our jail book club, right? This is where the staff go in and visit both adults and juveniles. It used to be just for juveniles, but it grew. The picture in the bottom that you see with everybody in a circle, that's the juveniles all together. I'm not sure if they're reading a book or just sharing poetry, but this is what happens when Free Minds goes and visits them. The other one is our book. When you hear me, you hear us. It's our latest book. There are three other books. We will put the link in the chat later on, just in case you are interested later on. The other one is our prison book club,
I'm
which
going to
is
stop there
our
just
mag.
one. Sorry to interrupt you. I always joke, poor Carlos who has to work with me every day. I'm from this interrupting culture. So I'm going to just jump in. This here is it's a format that goes from each stage that Carlos is about to describe. Our first book club possibility is here in DC and it's in person, and that could be with youth in the youth center or at the DC jail now with adults. Um, but it's got the same format. We sort of start out with a meditation, we play some kind of game to loosen up, we do an icebreaker like we just did, and then we read together because access is the point. And Free Minds is everything is voluntary. You can't be court ordered. You can't do. It's 100% voluntary at all stages. Um, but none of our, not of it's attractive even if you don't love to read or write. And we make sure that there's accessibility. We talk, and then there's writing, sharing, and a closing. And we read lots of books. This just happens to be our latest one. There we go.
So this is our prison book club, and just to give you just another little piece is DC, Washington D.C. does not have a state prison. We are sent to various prisons across the nation in the BOP in the federal system. It could be California, New Mexico, Arizona, Florida, Pennsylvania. Like it's endless. So Free Minds has this magazine with the right word as connect. Within it is poetry, is writing prompts, is pictures of the city, is information resources, job resources, re-entry, any kind of re-entry resources. This is where we find all that is in, and like the title says, it connects us back to the city. It connects us back to our community. The other one is our reentry book club, which is um, after being released, we still like hold our ties to Free Minds as they do to us. They invest in us with, just giving us support in every way that reentry um, entails. And that's pretty much who Free Minds is now. Um, the thing about Free Minds now is that the core of it is our members. That's the core, and it gives me a great pleasure to bring forth, introduce to y'all both Eon and Gene. Um,
I want to just
Eon,
say sorry, just say one thing about the reading and writing part of it. Um, Reading and writing are the ingredients. They're the tools for creating these relationships. And these relationships are so critical, especially for the youngest people, because if you can't communicate, you can't show who you are. You're not treated the same. I'm sure all of you out there know that. Like, and it's so hard as a teen, especially when you're told like it's dangerous. It's there's code not to speak. And this is a book clubs and write these and meeting, Gene, Carlos, Eon gives opportunities to open up, and that and communicate in so many ways. And book clubs make it possible to talk about things that you wouldn't ordinarily share because you're not really talking about yourself. You're talking about the person in the book. Or if there's an essay or a poem, you can respond to that and share things that you wouldn't. It's just an opportunity. So that's and that is critical for our members who are in the BOP, because the Bureau of Prisons, because all communications are through letters or responding to poetry. There's no face to face, and that's the majority of the time. But yet, very, very strong relationships are built. So strong that when members come home, like Gene, like Carlos is another story because he's in Honduras. You can see, they come and find us because there's that connection, and it's all through communication. On to you,
so
Bob.
first, we have Eon Williams, who is a published author, a prisoner's right and juvenile justice advocate. At the age of 17, Eon was sentenced to 17 years as an adult. He was released in 2010. Eon co-facilitates Free Minds Book Club sessions at the DC jail and at the Build Up, which is another program that we go to every week at Free Minds. Free Minds, he works as a credible messenger for the DC Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement um, pathway programs as a transformative mentor and violence prevention specialist with the Youth Advocate Program. Um, and we also have Gene Downing. He is the 2022 recipient of the Free Minds Congressman John Lewis Fellowship. Gene grew up in Washington, D.C., and very recently returned home after serving 21 years in prison since the age of 19. While incarcerated, Gene dedicated himself to education and work as a tutor to support others in obtaining their GED. Gene is a vice chair of Thrive Under 25. Gene is a prolific poet and spoken word artist. His poetry has been published in the Free Minds anthology, When You Hear Me, You Hear Us. Gene is passionate about giving back to the youth. So thank you both. Thank you both, man, for being here with us today. And now back to you, Janet.
So, Ian, you're a legend in this town.
Thank,
You are a beautiful writer. You are um, you are able to connect in a way that is what I think it's fair to say everyone hopes for with young people. And I think it's kind of interesting because not to cast some shade here, but you're not a peer. You're not the same age as the young people that you serve, and yet you're able to get them to establish really strong relationships and have them open up. And you one thing about you is that uh, your writings are really vulnerable, and you don't hold seem to hold it back when it comes to sharing pretty vividly great vulnerability in your own life. And there's a poem, and not just that, but you also are often kind of like yelling the call to action, like we got to change this, which we all here respect enormously and rely on.
thank
Uh, One of your poems, Little Man, I think kind of does all those things. Would you be game to share that? Just because I think it gives a taste of what you bring to the table. But this poem, it's had our reentry members, it's had our youngest people, and open up and talk about different topics because you explore so many things through this. So let me put this on the screen so everybody can kind of read along. And there we have it.
thanks, Janet.
Thank you.
Uh, the title of this poem is called Little Man. I wrote this for a build-up session that we had with Free Minds. There was really no direction. It was just a lot of things that was going on in the media. And me, myself, personally, I watched a special yesterday where they talk about the trauma that mentors go through. And I think at this one point when I wrote this, I had just lost a young man to gun violence. So that's why some of these things was on my mind. But just jumping straight into the poem, it's little man don't really understand. It's small misunderstandings turn into huge misunderstandings. He grabs his stick. No one is listening. No one is understanding. 30 shots go off. No one is understanding. The subculture is often ignored and people don't understand. Little man, 6 shots overnight, breaking news. Little man was raised to take no disrespect. Is what he was taught. Don't play no games. Make an example when they cross the line. That's what little man was taught. Somewhere along the way, little man wasn't taught that once the joint goes off, there's no taking it back. Can you move it?
So I definitely, Eon, definitely love that poem. Right, I've read it a couple of times before in the past, and each time, like the word "taught" sticks out to me. And just want to ask you, like what was in your mind, what was thinking when you not just wrote the poem, but highlighted that part right there. But what the streets basically teach you, how does little man, get these teachings from?
To be honest, I was kind of just going through some emotions when I wrote it, but to answer the question in a more vivid form for a person that may not understand some of those things is that, there's all different type of elements in the culture and all type of different elements in the subculture, and in some of the places where people like us grow up, and some of the places that we have the unfortunate time of being in, you're taught survival skills. For an example, I mentioned in this poem that little man was taught to take no disrespect, but what he interprets as disrespect may not be what the normal person interprets as disrespect. And his response to whatever disrespect could be, from a person calling him a name to giving him a dirty look, you know, his response will not be what we would call normal or moderate either. But until he's taught different, which is why, you know, going back to the word you used, taught, until he's taught different, he's not going to behave different. He's not going to behave better. And sometimes, you know, our young people need a little help and a little guidance to direct their responses and their behaviors. So I
Yeah.
think I try to capture some of that in that poem.
And you definitely did, and you highlighted just that, like how youth is chiseled by the environment, by the conditions that we are like have no control of at that age. Like we don't have a choice about moving out that, you know, out of a bad area, right? So we absorb everything around, and it actually becomes normal. You know what I mean? And
Even going back to what you used when you said the word taught, I know in other meetings that we had where we used some excerpts from that poem, you even mentioned that even when we get in trouble and we go away to these adult places, we're taught a whole slew of other things as well, you know what I mean? And a lot of these people, which I mentioned in this poem, Little Man, you know, they go away to these other places and then they're taught other corrupting things, and then they come back to society. And if, you know, the proper attention wasn't given before they were incarcerated, during their incarceration, then you're gonna have a huge problem after incarceration.
yeah. With that, like take us into your youth, your childhood. Like tell us a little bit about that.
For me, we had some other writings where we went into that. It kind of like put it in a category of what we go through from people like me. But for myself, you know, I was born in the 70s. I would say I grew up in the 80s. And in Washington, D.C., where I'm from, you know, drug problems were, a problem. Let's just say it like that. And, you know, I dealt with my mother having a drug overdose when I was a kid, my father being incarcerated when I was a kid, and I had a grandmother that was from, you know, Southern roots that was trying to raise a young guy, a young kid, you know, in the inner city. So without, you know, making no excuse for anything, I believe that I got caught up in the wrong crowd. I know that's cliche, but I was attracted and drawn to certain things in the urban area. And as I said in the poem Little Man, you know, I was taught things. I was taught things from drug dealing to misbehavior to all other type of things. And then I found myself in trouble as a kid, and I was charged as an adult, and I did 17 years in prison. And during my time in prison, I basically honed the skill of reading and writing, and found a way to explore the law library and get my sentence reduced and get my freedom, and write about, you know, 20 books along the way. So I would say that, you know, writing really changed my life, and reading really changed my life, because for experiences and exposure that I wasn't able to get outside of the prison, not that I'm praising the prison or anything for it, but I spent some time in prison doing what I would say is walking and talking with other type of scholars and teachers by reading books from, you know, the Western hemisphere to the Eastern hemisphere.
That's I don't know, just powerfully said, right? I read your essay, which Janet is going to ask you some questions about, and in that I just want to say how transparent you are, and you sharing that. Like Janet says, like you don't have a problems with that, being transparent to your audience, and I'm definitely like grateful to at the very least get to know you through your writings, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're a model. I mean, of in terms of like you have the essay that is in this book. You travel through this whole journey of being 6 years old, where you suffer so much trauma and loss, but you also describe it so well. What happens psychologically to you as a result, like the feeling of being numb and not feeling things, and then you know your transformation, coming back to yourself, really. Um,
Well, you know, that was kind of like almost like a therapy for trauma, because we used this at Free Minds, and Kelly had came up with ideas for, you know, us young and old. Our members are, you know, from teenage years to 60 years old and over. But anyway, she came up with a thing for us to kind of like identify and point out things of loss and pain. And there were multiple people that wrote their thoughts and their feelings down. And this was just what came out of me that day. But it was about 20 or 30 other people that wrote on the same topic.
It's I think it's, I mean, hats off to you, because I think it's the
Thank
key to, uh, it's a model for all of us, to heal and to uh, be able to face things and change things. How does it work with when you're with younger people? Like, how do you see it giving you? Um, how do you bring it into play as you're working
To
with?
be honest with you, right, I don't really have a magic term or magic person which I use. I try to take things from all walks of life. Like, I believe that with a lot of things that what we would call conflict resolution, or just being able to empathize with what other people are going through. Uh, I think that I learned some of those skills in prison, where guys like myself or Gene and Carlos, we had to mediate certain problems that could have been minor or major problems, but stop them from getting to a point where someone gets hurt. You learn some of those skills if you are, a kind of a mature person and you go through those things. But coming to the streets and in society, young people have different rules and standards, believe it or not. And what I try to do is I try not to judge them. I try to meet them where they are, and I try to speak to them in languages that doesn't make me sound like I'm trying to be, a clinical expert. I'm not that. I'm just a person that been through things more than once, and I try to learn from every mistake. So I feel like if I have a young man that's 16 years old or 19 years old, and he's going through some things and he has some problems at home, I think that I had some of those problems and I went through some of those things. And if we could just open up a line of communication, I can help him digest those things. I can't fix everyone's problem. I don't think any mentor or anyone in my shoes or anyone in this whole scheme of things that's try to help young people can fix it all at once. And I approach it on a case by case basis. But now at this point in my life, I think I've been doing this for about, let's say, 10 years. And in the process of 10 years, if I look back at all the individual cases, I believe that I've helped one young man at a time, tens of times at least.
Do you
Right.
enjoy it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, keep in mind, I just mentioned 10 years as a number that I threw out because I've been home for 12 years. But mentoring and helping other young people, and when I'm saying young people, all of them are not teenagers. I work with other young men that have went away for these times and returned back to society in their 40s and their 50s. And I just have a little bit of time out here before them, so I can still direct them to the DMV, to the Social Security building. But anyway, my point is that I was doing it before I was getting paid for it. So it was just something that I felt as though I had a need to do. And, people like me and you, we'd have been together on the other side of the wall. People like us help each other. If it weren't for people helping each other, we wouldn't grow.
That's right.
There's a member of ours named D'Angelo who was in the book club at the jail with Kelly and Tara really very early on, and he wrote a poem that, I'd love it if you would be willing to read, Ian, because I think it does what you do in that it lays out the language of something that maybe you would be forbidden, kind of while you're in prison, or in, on the streets with your friends, but is so important if you're going to be able to heal, and grow. And it's called "Do Grown Men Cry?" And we've seen, I mean, Carlos, you could tell it. We've seen in halfway houses and schools, community colleges, people react to this poem
You
very
sharing the
strong.
wrong screen?
Oh, knew it would happen once. Um, have a very strong visceral reaction to this poem, and open up after they hear it. We'll try one more time. Did I get it this time?
Yeah.
Great.
Yes. All
So
right.
this
This
is,
poem is by one of our members, D'Angelo. I happen to know him personally and watched his growth from a young man when we was in prison and we was getting books from Free Minds and we were exploring different readings and writings, as I said, that I did myself. So it's a pleasure to be able to read this poem. So to jump straight in it, do grown men cry? All things, it seems to me, must we test, accept the truth, reject the rest. So we must investigate or try to see what makes a grown man cry. macho, big, tough, and strong. To admit their tears they think is wrong. But let me tell you on the sly, yes, these real grown men do cry. Mom is gone now. That's very tough. Didn't hug her near enough. She's with her maker in the sky. Forgiveness cause a grown man to Forgiveness cause a grown man to cry. Leave your homeland perhaps forever. Start a new life. Forget home never. You may in this new land die. Memories may cause a grown man to cry. Blanks filled in. Now take a good look. What have you written in your life's book? If for reasons you come up dry, that alone should cause your grown ass to cry.
Yes, thank you for that. He never censors it. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You,
I want to make sure we should get Gene into this conversation. Um, because you come at come at things from a slightly different angle, I think sometimes. Gene, you've been working almost every single day with a wide variety of young people, um, and older people since you've been home. Uh, and I know Carlos, maybe you want to
Yeah,
open.
Gene, I definitely like. I don't know why every time I wish to introduce you is always with this like this big spotlight and stuff like that, and that spotlight being your poem, right? One of your spoken word poem, which I enjoy. So if you don't mind, can you start us off with that?
Oh, by all means, I can. Um, so yeah, I'll share a poem that I wrote titled A Time to Heal. I don't know how I forgot the name of that. A Time to Heal. And here it goes. They say time heals all wounds. But ironically, time created mine. From murder, robbery, and other related crimes, got me snatched from my city into a different state of mind. But my creative mind created a line between construction and destruction. But I chose the former. Plus, I've seen every form of nefarious acts. It ain't normal. See, you and I, we're not much different. We've all had issues that cut deep through the meat and into the white tissue. No light issues, but life issues, plight, sight, visuals, right rituals, all to men what's not been right with you, but to no avail. Because the only way to get right with you is to visit yourself. Don't need an invite. Just take a deep look inside. Now that's insight. Don't pretend like this pretend life and that pain is on vacay or that emotions are meant to be withheld like taxes on payday. And attach the fact that attach the backs, the burdens that attach the blacks like attacking blacks. No, wait. That's a different wound. But it bleeds the same. No, these are bandages that needs to change. No, I need to see the change. No, wait, I said I need to see the change. No, I need see the change. No, strike that. I need to be the change. Because every beating left a feeling that healing was impossible. And for every obstacle, success improbable. But every minuscule molecule that makes up my biological lacks patience in your psychological hospital. Only scriptures, no prescriptions in my arsenal, because it's going to take more than time for my wounds to heal by far. But if time does heal all wounds, it still leaves a scar. It's a time to heal. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's how I like to introduce Gene, everybody. Powerful. Love your work. Love your art. That's what I call it. right? Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, obviously, I am the 2022 Congressman John Lewis Fellow, Freeman Support Ambassador, and vice chair, excuse me, Thriving 25, which advocates for the abolishment of Title 16, among other things that deal with juveniles and the treatment of them in these facilities. I've recently come home from doing 21 years in prison. At the age of 19, I was incarcerated. I've only been home 6 months, and it feels like 6 years. I've been working seemingly nonstop with doing what I love, so I have no complaints. Whether it's speaking to the youth, whether it's doing these Zoom meetings, whether it's doing the spoken word, every experience is literally that for me, an experience. And like I said before, I love doing it.
You bring that enthusiasm and it's and joy. And when you tell your story of being a kid in DC, it starts out with you liked to read and write and you liked school as a little kid. Many of our members don't read or write. Uh, that was a really big negative factor in their life. Not so for you. But then, as you got older, that changed. Uh, and maybe, and when you share that, we see students react like that, as well as when you share your art. Can you
Well,
tell us a little bit about you? And
yeah. I mean, for me, when I was growing up in DC, and I grew up in Southeast DC, for those who may not know, at that time, especially in the late 80s, early 90s, or throughout the 90s for that matter, it wasn't the most ideal place for a kid to grow up. But unfortunately and realistically, that was where a lot of kids grew up, And though I was surrounded by the whole whatever you can imagine when it comes to things in poverty. When I was in elementary school, I was almost oblivious to it because I was focused in school. I was a grade A student. I love to read. I always ask people, do they remember learning how to tie their shoes or the first time they learned to go potty? And depending on what the answer is, the point is that if you don't remember, it's because you probably shouldn't. And for me, that's how it is for reading. Like, I don't remember not knowing how to read. I've known how to read as long as I can remember. I enjoyed it. But I did have a bit of a disconnect when I reached a certain age, preteen, 11, 12 years old, started going to junior high school. I guess puberty kicking in. My awareness is heightened. I understand now what poverty really is, and the rigors of it. And for me, I guess I don't like to use the cliche, I became a product of my environment, but for lack of a better term, that is essentially what happened. I started to, be in the street, and it was normal though. I didn't feel like I made a transition into the street, like, oh, I went from good to bad. I felt like it was a rites of passage, so to speak. And when you knew that, your parents, and for me, it was a single parent, didn't have the financial wherewithal to give you the things you thought you needed, because it really wasn't what I needed, it was what I wanted. I figured as a man, I had to go and obtain these things myself. And little did I know, though, that path was leading me to one or two places. And we all heard that story, whether it was prison, or death. And for me, it was the former. I did, 21 years in prison. And there is where I reconnected, like I like to say, with myself. I started back, reading and writing. And like, I guess I can say I fell in love all over again with it. And as Eon said, like, I honed my skill. And because reading is a skill, in fact, and writing, actually. And got my GED, and then the avalanche of education just happened, and I, started to teach GED classes and some college courses, and
Gene, I'm
now,
going to interrupt you, which I'm sorry to do, just because we're as usual, we're going over time, and I do want to make sure that questions can come in. Like
okay,
and I know we're cutting you really short, but I think the thing about you is when you come in and you share, you share how you feel and you show how you feel, with whether it's reading someone else's poem, reading performing your own, you make it possible for others to get excited, and that seems to be a different way to connect. And I just want to end your time and then just open up the Q&A with, I know that you went to our book club, um, in a lock facility recently, and had a very positive experience where students were kind of like not really into doing anything, but when you shared your poem, there was a response that you generated, you inspired others to participate in, write, and share things with you.
Yeah. I mean, well, yeah, I did. And it was it was a it was a crazy experience for me because I didn't know that I wasn't, I expected to have some anxiety going back into the facility, and I did not. But when I got there and, some of the guys wasn't as ready to participate, and when they learned by me sharing with them that I also do creative writing or poetry, and when I display my talents, I guess, they were, everything changed from that point on. And then they, started to participate. Not only did they participate, they wrote their own poems, they shared them, they wanted to rap, they wanted me to see what they, with whatever talent they may have had or have. And yeah, and for me, it was almost like I was back home. And I use home in a loving way because I just recently got released. So when I walked in there, it was like, oh, I was just in this setting. So I was able to speak to them in their language and be accepted, and not come at them like Eon said, not come at them like as if I'm trying to be something else. Like, I can speak with you in your language because I come from directly where you come from. So yeah, that was an incredible experience for me.
So I'm definitely like just congratulate both you men for your all your successes, all the work that you get, you put to give back to the community. I also you want to use this time for anybody who has questions, like please put them in the chat, and then we'll make sure these men get to it. I won't kick it off with a question on my own. You know, the one thing that us three, now we're old grown 40 men, right? We went to prison young, 17, 16, 19, right? So my question to you both is like, what would you like to see different? You know what I mean? As far as as it relates to juvenile, just like throwing away the key kind of thing. What would you men like to see, be done different? How would things, be different?
I try to answer what I would like to see, because what I like to see is not really that extravagant. I like to see all the effort and energy that the people put into, like, to lock them up, throw away the key. I like for those people to put all that same energy, if it was possible, into trying to help and divert some of these people before they get into a situation where they have done something that must be punished to that effect. And I would like for the people like myself, right, to understand that it's, when I say like myself, I consider myself and people like me the people that's trying to help these young people with problems, right? And I would like for people like us to be able to be in a position to continue to do these type of things and have this type of work available for us. So, I think I would like for the people that's in position to be able to support these things, all the way around the board as well. So if we was able to do that, then we could show one person that's been able to be successful in whatever path that they travel. Not that everybody will travel the same path, but I've learned from my dealings, and I haven't learned anything like textbook wise or book knowledge wise. I've watched it go on like a race. You just see who the winner is. And I noticed that when one of the guys accomplished something, whether it's a CDL or a GED or even just getting off of probation successfully, and another one of their friends that wouldn't have been able to see that or be exposed to that because they don't follow any type of other news channels or any other thing but what's going on in their subculture, that then they see that it's realistic and they can do it. So I hope that was clear enough for you.
Definitely was. Thank you.
Yeah, and I kind of like echo Eon's sentiments, but I want to add to it because not only do I want to see exactly that, what he just said, that's 100%, but because you have guys like us that come from, the background we come from, but you see that we're doing what we're doing, it would be the best thing in the world if we can have the the politicians, for the other nonprofit organizations and everybody else who actually fight in the same fight but on different platforms, actually give us the opportunity to be more in the forefront because we have better relativity to some of these youth, and opposed to trying to hit the pound of pavement in suits and speaking a language that they may not understand, and then because they're going to look at you as an authority figure, and we all know that teens and authority do not mesh. So if these people can just give us better platforms, put us in better positions to let us like convey whatever the messages are without trying to impede it, because sometimes we're the one that get impeded. Sometimes we have hurdles as well, so we can get like that support, then we can actually make a bigger impact on the youth, because at the end of the day, we are the people that we needed when we were that age.
Right,
We have,
right.
so yeah, and that's what I would like to see. I want to see us in these positions more of in the forefront, where we don't have to fight to get there, that people will push us there.
There's a
Right.
question by Riley. Did you have times where you had trouble reaching someone when they were closed off to you and didn't want to participate or engage? What did you do?
Oh yeah, I was actually typing, so I'm gonna stop. Excuse me for jumping in, but it had been many times for me where I had that problem, and it's taken days and weeks and even months sometimes to find a way to connect. To give a perfect example, I had one guy that wasn't engaged in any other resume writing, job training programs, this or that, but on the side, I heard him constantly talking to a buddy of his about PlayStation. I am 40 some years old, but I do play video games, and I was able to lock into him and lock in with him through PlayStation playing. I found out that he used to be up 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm a writer. I write late into the night. We began to play football. We began to play Madden over the PlayStation through the internet. And through that process, we created a bond that I was able to figure out a way to not have to try to meet him here, meet him there. I met him where he was at. And from that process, he began to call me when he had issues.
That's the thing I want to highlight. Like as far as both of you, man. Like that's the perfect word to connect, right? It's always like reaching another individual, and that's like treading that same kind of path. You don't want to tell them what to do and what not to do. That's not going to be like fruitful. It's like you just, like you said, like sort of like come down a little bit to his level and meet him halfway so you can communicate. And I definitely appreciate that. James?
Yeah, and I had the same similar situation. Only for me, it was hip hop, because I do the poems, I do spoken word, but I also do hip hop. And being 40 something, sometimes the youngsters, the gap of what type of music we used to listen to, back in our time, and the music they listen to now, they automatically assume that being 40 something, oh, you can't relate to this. So me, when I displayed my hip hop version of my talent, and they were like, "Oh, wait a minute, you can actually rap, and kind of get us involved." And then from that on, that changes. It always works, and it changes everything. From that, they take the advice. They want to know what I think about their rhymes. They want to know what I think of. They even talk to me about their relationships with their girlfriends because of what I might have said in a song about relationships and girlfriends. So it's always something that I can use to connect, and that's hip hop.
And we fought, like, I think that like that structure of the book club, there's always like a game. There's always some other way to relate, and not and sometimes taking the focus off of and the pressure off of the person. I think that's where sort of having a poem, or you're reading a book together, or an essay, the focus is elsewhere, and you react, and there's a way to react to it. Um, you can find relevance and connection or rejection. I mean, you can just spend time talking about how what you don't like about why you hate the book that, that was selected. I mean, you can get people to engage, and sometimes take it helps to take that focus off of them and wait for them to be ready, to show themselves. And I think when you show the way you all show yourselves, that opens that door.
Yeah. With these events, like time is always like against us and does an injustice. Um, so we will hold off on the questions and answers real quick and go to this platform that we want to share with you all. That you will get the link. And me and Janet are going to give you like a quick tutorial, just in case, to make sure like you know how to navigate through it. We're gonna start with a couple of tips. Uh,
Let's explain like a little backdrop about, um, how we get these poems that I'm about to put up and
Yeah,
what it
these
means.
poems comes from our members that are incarcerated. This event on this, which is called On the Same Page, used to be in person, and these poems that used to come in through the mail, we would share them. We will all sit in a circle and just write down a feedback on a piece of paper and send it back to the writers, to the authors of the poem. Because of what COVID is now we have this platform and we share it in these virtual OTSPs, on the same page events, with the same concept to make sure that the poets, the writers, the authors, they receive back this material with the feedback, and the feedback is to encourage them to continue to do good, continue to write, continue to like just pick um, those good choices that would help them in the transition to rehabilitation. So this right here is our mirror platform, where there will be poems here, right? And the first thing that we do is that we always direct them to the arrow on the left hand side, to make sure that it's clicked and turned blue. Once it's turned blue, it's basically activated. Then we go into the T for text, and we bring it over to the page
Which
and
poem
just
do you
click.
want?
It doesn't matter. Free mind is good. Um, and then we click over, and then we start typing. So one of the things is we always tell people, like, address them by their name, by their first name. Two reasons: we connect with them as from one human being to another, and the other one is a reminder that, yeah, in prison you are always called by a number, or with us, as friends, as family, and we just do first name basis. The other thing is, like, connect to the poem. Um, when he writes this free mind, he says sitting on the beach playing with the sand. Like, I would, if that was me, I'm gonna respond to the poem this way. It's like, dear Stefan, I was just sitting on the beach playing with the sand, and I can't tell you what better uh, picture that describes freedom for me. I love your poem, and I want to encourage you to keep writing. Um, and that's pretty much it. Like, connect to the poem, share something, be sincere. We do stay away from critiquing the poet, like as far as syntax, grammar. This is not a platform for that. This is not like the place for that. We just want to encourage them to continue on. If I don't like what I wrote, there's always the undo button, which is the little curved arrow in the same toolbar, and you just delete it. There's a pen, um, with different colors. You could draw. D'Angelo, which is the poem that Eon wrote, he told a story about how when he got his feedback in his poem, there was a picture of Bugs Bunny with boxing gloves, and it had nothing to do with the poem at all. But it just brought that life to him, to the poem. And it just made him smile to receive that feedback. So, just do anything. And again, this undo button, if for some reason the print is too small, at the bottom right corner is the enlarge, um, with the plus and minus sign. And the other thing is, just to move to the next poem, you just click and drag. And that's pretty much it, unless I forgot something that Janet, Jean, or Eon may want to.
So there'll be many poems here, and they'll be focused, many from teens. Excuse me. You'll know that they're teens because it'll be initials. Oops. And we encourage you, we format it. So if you're writing and it's all over the place, we'll make sure it all fits. Don't be inhibited. Think of it as a conversation. How did it feel like to get that in, these poems back covered in comments? You had a lot of them, Jean, before you came home. What was that like for you?
Yeah, it was an amazing feeling. In fact, it's a feeling that I would never forget. And I still have all of the poems that was sent back to me with all the comments on it. For me, it was incredible because obviously, where I was, and it was during COVID, we were locked down a lot. So getting mail was like one things that we look forward to. So I was getting mail and didn't expect sometimes to get these poems back to me with all of this feedback on it. And some of the feedback was like so incredible. I couldn't even really comprehend how my words can affect these people this way. And then, obviously it gave me some bragging rights. I wanted to show everybody that I can show. And it gave me confidence and inspiration to keep writing. And that's for sure. That was really, really impactful for me.
And this is something you can do at the end of at the end, if you're with young people and you have some kind of a writing prop, and you can have them comment on each other. You can have them share. People, we see that in our book clubs, that um, that communal activity really encourages a communal response, even if it's from strangers, like through the mail. It inspires more writing and growth, and is also makes you know you're not forgotten, that your ideas matter. So I know we're coming to the end. We hope you we hope you we really hope that you enjoyed this, and go back and try some, try, you know I am inarticulate at the end of this. uh Try sharing books, poems, and bringing in people in your community who have lived experiences to make that connection.
Definitely
Yeah.
thank everybody too. Just like for being having giving us the opportunity, giving Free Minds the opportunity to be here with y'all, share. JDA, like y'all have been great, so we're definitely grateful for it for this moment.